We're looking at the hard empirical evidence behind what it takes to achieve sustained, quantifiable greatness.
And we're not talking about business fads or those flashy turnaround stories.
No, not at all. Our focus is on one single deep, decade-spanning question. How do companies make that leap from just being good, solid, profitable, but ultimately average, to achieving results that are truly enduringly great?
That's the mission. And what I think is so compelling about this is the standard of evidence. We're digging into research that looked at companies over 30 years, searching for what they call the timeless physics of great organizations.
Right. These are the underlying principles that just hold true. It doesn't matter if your industry is steel or banking or tech. It's about fundamental cause and effect.
And the standard they set for this, I mean, it was incredibly high, wasn't it?
Oh, astronomically high. The researchers started with the Fortune 500 list from 1965 to 1995. So you're talking about thousands of companies. And from that huge pool, they only found 11 that actually met the good to great criteria.
Just 11. So what did that transition actually look like? What does great even mean here?
It means that at some point, at their inflection point, these companies started generating stock returns that were at least 7 times the general market.
7 times.
7 times the market average. And this is key. They maintain that for 15 years straight. So that filters out all the lucky breaks, the little bubbles, all the flashes in the pan.
Wow. Okay. So give us an example.
The case of Walgreens is probably the most stunning. For 40 years, Walgreens was completely and totally average, just tracking the market right in the middle.
Nothing special.
Nothing. Then, in 1975, something fundamental shifts. And the data that comes out of that shift is just, it's wild.
Yeah.
If you invested $1 in Walgreens at the end of 1975 and held it to the year 2000, that $1 would have beaten $1 in Intel, the tech superstar, by almost 2 times. It beat General Electric by nearly 5 times.
GE? Really?
Yep. It beat Coca-Cola by nearly 8 times, and it just crushed the general market by over 15 times.
15 times. That is the definition of going from good to great. It's a whole other level.
It's a geometric leap.
So before we dive into the things they did,
Yeah.
the mechanics of the shift, we have to talk about what they found that just contradicts everything we think we know.
Yes, this is crucial. Because this research completely flips the script. It tells us what didn't matter, and if you're looking for greatness, you have to stop chasing ghosts.
Right.
The research team went in expecting to find, these super complex strategies, huge incentive plans, famous leaders, and they were just constantly amazed at what they didn't see inside these great companies.
So let's start with the big one, the one the media loves, the CEO myth. The idea that you need this heroic, larger-than-life savior, usually brought in from the outside to shake things up.
The Rambo in pinstripes.
Yeah.
And the data shows the complete opposite. It's a negative correlation. These big celebrity leaders brought in from the outside are negatively correlated with making that leap from good to great.
Negatively. So you're actually hurting your chances.
It seems so. Think about the drama that comes with an external hire, the press conferences, the big announcements. It's all short-term hype. But for the good to great companies, 10 out of the 11 CEOs who led the change came from inside the company.
They were homegrown.
Homegrown, quiet, deeply knowledgeable people. And if you look at the comparison companies, the ones that stayed good, they hired outside CEOs 6 times more often.
So that celebrity leader is much more likely to give you a spectacular flameout, not enduring greatness.
That's what the data suggests. It's a risk factor, not an asset.
Okay, the next one is even more challenging to modern business thinking. Compensation.
Yeah.
Surely, to get 7 times the market, you need massive stock options, huge bonuses.
You'd think so, but the research found no systematic pattern, no link between specific executive pay structures and the process of going good to great.
So they didn't pay more.
They didn't pay less, but they didn't pay dramatically more either. And the structure of the packages, how much was stock versus cash, it just didn't differentiate the great ones.
That just runs counter to this whole idea of incentive alignment. So what was the point of compensation then?
The point wasn't to motivate the wrong people to do the right things. It was simply to get and keep the right people on the bus in the first place.
Yeah.
The motivation for those people was internal. It was the mission, the chance to build something great. They didn't need to be over-incentivized.
Okay, what about strategy? You have to have a brilliant secret strategy, right?
This one's a little more nuanced. It's not that strategy didn't matter. Both sets of companies had well-defined strategies.
So what was the difference?
It wasn't the strategy itself, it was the process of how they got to it. For the great companies, that process was messy. It was iterative, full of debate, constantly confronting the brutal facts of reality. And the final strategy was always incredibly simple and deeply informed, not complex and speculative.
So it's not the destination, it's how you make the map.
A great way to put it.
What about the other big levers people pull? Technology or mergers and acquisitions?
M&A played virtually no role in igniting the transformation. You can't just smash two mediocre companies together and hope for a great one. You just get a bigger mediocrity.
Right.
And technology, same thing. It didn't cause the leap. It's a powerful tool, a huge accelerator, but only after the foundation is in place. It can't substitute for disciplined thinking.
Okay, last one. The soft stuff. Managing change, motivating people. All the town halls and internal PR campaigns.
The good to great companies paid almost no attention to that stuff. They weren't focused on getting buy-in. They were focused on getting the plan right, and more importantly, getting the right people.
And the motivation just happened.
It largely melts away as a problem. When you have the right people and they see tangible results, they see momentum building, that's more powerful than any motivational speech you could ever give.
Okay, this is fascinating. So if it's not the celebrity CEO, not the pay, not the grand strategy, what was it? The research breaks it down into 3 pillars: disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined action. So let's start with the people, right at the top, with this idea of level 5 leadership.
Level 5 is the foundation, and it's so important to say this was an empirical discovery. The researchers actually tried to downplay the role of the CEO, but the data was just overwhelming. All 11 good to great companies had a level 5 leader at the helm during the transition.
So how do you define level 5? It's more than just being a competent manager, which is level 4.
It's a profound and paradoxical blend of 2 traits. On one side, you have deep, genuine personal humility. These are not self-aggrandizing people.
Okay.
And on the other side, you have a fierce, almost ferocious professional will. They channel all their ego, all their ambition, not into personal fame, but into building something great that will outlast them.
You're the plow horse, not the show horse.
Exactly, the plow horse. And the fact that 10 of the 11 came from inside the company just reinforces that. They weren't focused on building a personal brand. They were the unsung heroes who just did the work.
And the archetypal example of this is Darwin Smith at Kimberly-Clark.
He is the ultimate anti-savior, a quiet, unassuming man. He preferred hanging out with plumbers and electricians on the factory floor. He dressed like a farmhand who just found a suit.
I remember the detail that he'd lost part of a finger on the job early in his career and still put himself through Harvard Law.
Yeah.
That speaks to that will.
It absolutely does. That grit was the bedrock of his character. But his will was tested almost immediately. 2 months after he becomes CEO, he gets diagnosed with nose and throat cancer.
Wow.
And the doctors give him less than a year to live.
What a monumental obstacle right on top of trying to lead a company. So what did he do?
He tells the board, but he makes it crystal clear. I'm not dead yet, and I'm not stepping down. He kept his insane work schedule, commuting weekly from Wisconsin to Houston for radiation therapy.
How long?
He lived 25 more years, most of them as CEO, driving the transformation. That relentless resolve is what gave him the psychological foundation for the huge strategic move he was about to make.
The one Wall Street called stupid.
The one Wall Street called stupid. He decided to sell the company's entire historical core business, the paper mills.
I mean, that's everything they were.
It was their identity, the vast majority of their revenue. He sold all the mills, even the original one in Kimberly, Wisconsin, and threw every single resource into their tiny consumer brands like Huggies and Kleenex.
He burned the boats. There was no going back.
It was a total burn the boats moment, committing to a fight against giants like Procter & Gamble on their turf with no safety net.
The internal and external backlash must have been immense.
Oh, it was huge. Wall Street downgraded the stock immediately. Analysts called it corporate suicide. But Smith never blinked. His ferocious will drove it, and his humility allowed him to face the brutal fact that they were never going to be the best in the world at paper.
And the result?
25 years later, Kimberly-Clark owned their competitor Scott Paper outright and was beating P&G in 6 out of 8 product categories.
And his famous quote about it was something like, "I never stopped trying to become qualified for the job."
The perfect summary of level 5, humility and will.
Now you contrast that with the level 4 leaders in the comparison companies, the ones whose ambition was really about themselves.
Right, and the prime example is Al Dunlap, who took over Scott Paper, Kimberly-Clark's direct comparison.
Chainsaw.
That's the one. He boasted about his nickname, Rambo in pinstripes. He made $100 million in just 603 days of work, and his entire focus was on slashing costs, cutting R&D and dressing up the company for a quick sale.
So massive short-term gain for him personally.
For him, yes. But he left a gutted, weakened organization behind. He didn't build anything that would last.
And then there's a more subtle example, like Lee Iacocca at Chrysler. He was a brilliant turnaround artist.
A brilliant level 4 leader, yes, but not a level 5 institution builder. His ambition was all about being on center stage. He starred in his own commercials. He loved being the face of the company.
So what's the evidence that this self-focus actually hurt the company long-term?
Well, he kept postponing his retirement, and then even after he left, he demanded a private jet and stock options. But the real kicker, he later joined a hostile takeover bid for the very company he supposedly saved.
Wow.
It showed his ultimate loyalty was to his own role, his own financial interest, not the enduring health of Chrysler. And the company, after a brief comeback, never sustained greatness.
So the key is that level 5 ambition for the company. It's all about making sure the place is great long after you're gone. And that brings us right to the second pillar of disciplined people. First who, then what?
This might be the single most powerful and counterintuitive finding in the whole study.
Because in a crisis, your gut tells you to set a new direction immediately.
Right. The comparison companies all did that. First what? The vision, the strategy. Then they went out and got the people to execute it. The great companies did the complete opposite.
First who?
First who? They focused on getting the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats. Only after that was done did they figure out where the bus was going.
And why is that so critical for long-term success?
Well, for a few reasons. First, if you have the right people, you don't really have to spend a lot of time managing or motivating them. Second, and this is huge, in a world that changes so fast, a great strategy today could be obsolete tomorrow. But if you have the right people, they can adapt. They can figure out the next great strategy.
Which highlights the big problem with that genius with 1,000 helpers model.
Which is catastrophic for endurance. Look at Jack Eckerd of Eckerd Corp, Walgreens comparison. Eckerd was a genius at the market insight, deal making, but he was terrible at building a team.
So the whole strategy was just in his head.
Exactly. When he left, the genius walked out the door and the company just fell apart. Meanwhile, Cork Walgreen at Walgreens, his genius was for picking the right people. He built the best executive team in the industry. The strategy came from their dialogue, not from one single genius.
Okay, so this all comes down to being rigorous, not ruthless, in your people decisions. What's the difference? Because that can sound like it's a semantic game.
It's a huge difference. Ruthlessness is cutting people indiscriminately, often based on emotion or short-term cost pressure. Rigor is about consistently maintaining extremely high standards and making tough decisions promptly for the health of the whole organization.
So let's look at David Maxwell at Fannie Mae. He's in this huge crisis. The company's losing $1 million a day.
Every single business day. And everyone is screaming for a new plan, a new strategy, but he refuses to rush the what. He focuses on the who. He interviews all 26 of his top officers and tells them point blank how hard this is going to be. Only air players giving an A-plus effort need apply.
And what happens?
14 of them leave voluntarily. They self-select off the bus. They knew they couldn't meet the standard. He then replaces them with the best and brightest he can find. And that immediately creates this culture of peer pressure where, as one exec said, you can't fake it at Fannie Mae.
But then you have a case like Wells Fargo buying Crocker Bank. They fired 1,600 managers on day one. I mean, that sounds pretty ruthless.
It does on the surface,
Yeah.
but you have to look at the intent. Crocker was this old-school bureaucratic bank. Wells Fargo was lean, efficient, performance-driven. They knew the cultures were totally incompatible.
So why do it so fast?
Because they saw letting it drag on as the real ruthlessness, what they call death by 1,000 cuts. Letting all those people hang in limbo for months not knowing if they have a future. That's cruel.
Yeah.
It was painful, but it was rigorous fairness. They were clear about the standards and they acted decisively.
Okay, that makes sense. So the research boils this down to 3 practical disciplines for getting the people decisions right. What's the first one?
First one is, when in doubt, don't hire, keep looking. This takes immense discipline. Alan Wurtzel at Circuit City was famous for this. He'd just insist on finding the exact right person, even if it meant a role was open for a long time.
Even if it meant short-term pain.
Absolutely. His view was that the damage from hiring the wrong person is far greater than the opportunity cost of waiting. You have to clean up that mistake later, and that just halts all your momentum.
Okay, discipline number 2 is for the people already there. When you know you need a change, act. But how do you really know? It's easy to second-guess yourself.
The research came up with two brutally simple questions to ask yourself.
Mm-hmm.
First, knowing what you know now, would you hire this person again? And second, if this person told you today they were leaving for a great new job, would you feel terribly disappointed or secretly relieved?
Wow. If the answer is relief, you've known for a while.
You've already made the decision, you just haven't had the courage to act on it. And the time you spend trying to manage the wrong people is time you can never get back.
Right. And the third discipline is about how you deploy your best talent,
Yes, put your best people on your biggest opportunities, not your biggest problems.
which is the opposite of what most people do. We throw our best people at the biggest fire.
We do. But if you put your A player on a failing unit, the best you can hope for is that it stops failing. It becomes average. The upside is capped. But if you put that same A player on your biggest opportunity, the upside is, well, it's exponential.
So managing problems just makes you good.
Building opportunities is what makes you great. Philip Morris did this perfectly. They identified international markets as their single biggest opportunity, even though it was less than 1% of their business at the time.
Most companies would put a junior person on that.
Right. But they put one of their absolute top executives, George Weissman, on it. And under his leadership, Marlboro became the #1 cigarette in the world before it was even #1 in the U.S. They invested their best talent in their best shot at greatness.
So we've covered disciplined people. Now we shift to disciplined thought. And the first step is this idea of confronting the brutal facts.
This is that critical shift from focusing on people to focusing on the internal mental discipline. The great leaders, they resisted that urge to walk in with the answer. They came in with questions. Their level 5 humility allowed them to create a climate where the truth, no matter how ugly, could actually come out.
The Socratic leader style, it looked different in different places.
Very different. At Circuit City, Alan Wurtzel was like a prosecutor. He'd just ask why, over and over again until he truly understood the reality. He wasn't trying to blame or manipulate. He was just trying to understand.
And then at Nucor, the steel company, it was just chaos.
It was described as chaos. Ken Iverson would have these meetings where people were yelling, pounding on tables in this fierce, passionate search for the best answer. He let the debate rage because he knew that once the truth was out and the decision was made, everyone would unify behind it.
He sought debate, not consensus.
Perfectly put.
But the brutal facts are always out there. The challenge is making them unignorable. How do these companies do that?
It wasn't that they had better information. It was that they developed mechanisms to force a confrontation with reality. One great tool was what they called autopsies without blame.
And Joe Coleman at Philip Morris did this after the failed 7-Up acquisition.
Yeah, that was a huge, visible blunder. Instead of burying it, Coleman spent 5 pages in his own book dissecting exactly what went wrong. And, crucially, he blamed only himself. He took full responsibility, and he praised the people who had argued against the deal in the first place.
So that creates psychological safety.
A profound sense of it. The message is it's okay to be wrong as long as we learn from it. It transforms failure from a career killer into tuition paid for a valuable lesson.
And what about that red flag mechanism at Granite Rock?
Oh, that's a brilliant one. Granite Rock sold crushed rock and concrete, and they instituted a policy called short pay.
Right, where the customer could just decide not to pay for something.
Exactly. They gave the customer total unconditional power to just circle an item on the invoice and deduct the payment if they weren't satisfied. No questions asked.
That's terrifying.
It's terrifying, but it's an unignorable early warning system. You can't rationalize away a customer literally refusing to pay you. It forces you to confront dissatisfaction in real time and fix the root cause before you lose that customer for good.
All of this, facing the ugly truth, requires a special kind of mental toughness. Which brings us to the core psychological engine, the Stockdale paradox.
This is the duality that makes everything else possible. You must retain absolute, unwavering faith that you will prevail in the end no matter what. And at the same time, you must have the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality.
And it's named after Admiral Jim Stockdale, who was a prisoner of war in Vietnam.
He was the highest-ranking U.S. officer in the Hanoi Hilton for 8 years, tortured more than 20 times. And when he was asked later who didn't make it out, his answer was chilling. He said, "The optimists."
That's so counterintuitive.
It is. But he explained that the optimists were the ones who kept saying, "We'll be out by Christmas," and Christmas would come and go. Then it was, "We'll be out by Easter," and Easter would pass. And they died of a broken heart.
Because they couldn't handle the reality.
They couldn't. Stockdale survived because he never lost faith that he would get out and make his life meaningful again. But he accepted the brutal fact that he didn't know when. He could be there for a very, very long time.
Unwavering faith combined with brutal reality.
That's the paradox in action.
Okay, so once you've confronted the brutal facts, disciplined thought moves to synthesizing everything into one simple guiding idea, the hedgehog concept.
Right, from the old parable. The fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing. This concept isn't a goal or a strategy. It's a deep, simple understanding that guides every single decision. And it has to live at the intersection of three circles.
Circle 1. What can you be the best in the world at? And the key here is potential, not just what you're good at now.
This requires that radical self-honesty we've been talking about. Abbott Labs is a great example. They had to face the brutal fact that they could never be the best pharmaceutical research company. Merck was just too far ahead.
So they didn't just stick with it because they were pretty good at it.
No. They asked what they could be the best at, and they realized they could dominate in creating products for cost-effective healthcare, like diagnostics and nutrition. They pivoted to their area of potential greatness, while their competitor, Upjohn, clung to the delusion they could beat Merck and eventually failed.
Okay, circle 2 is more analytical. What drives your economic engine? The profit per X.
This is a huge breakthrough moment for these companies. They dig past just revenue or profit to find the one single denominator that gives them the most insight into how they generate cash. For most retailers, the metric is profit per store.
But not for Walgreens.
No, for Walgreens, the key metric was profit per customer visit. They realized their advantage was convenience. Every time someone came in for a prescription, it was a chance to sell them high-margin items. So they focused everything on maximizing the value of that trip.
And for Nucor, the steel company.
Profit per ton of finished steel. That drove all their decisions about efficiency. For Wells Fargo, it was profit per employee, which drove their high-performance culture. You have to find your specific X.
And the third circle is what you're deeply passionate about.
And this has to be authentic. You can't fake it. The road to great is just too long and too hard. If you don't genuinely love the work, you won't have the stomach to stick with it.
Like the Philip Morris execs being passionate consumers of their own products.
Exactly. Or Fannie Mae, where they weren't passionate about packaging mortgages, they were passionate about the mission of democratizing homeownership. That's what got them through the dark times.
So once you find that intersection of the three circles, the hard part is having the discipline to say no.
This is where the rubber meets the road. The mantra becomes, if it doesn't fit squarely in our hedgehog concept, we don't do it. Period. They knew they were more likely to die of indigestion from too many opportunities than starvation from too few.
And Walgreens lived this, while Eckerd did the opposite.
Walgreens just stuck to its convenient drugstore concept relentlessly. Eckerd, chasing easy growth, jumped into the home video market in the 80s. It was completely outside their circles. They lost over $30 million on that one distraction, and it was the beginning of the end for them as an independent company.
That discipline is everything. So that brings us to our final section, disciplined action. And we start with the role of technology.
This is such an important corrective to the way we usually talk about tech. Technology is a powerful accelerator, but it is never the creator of a good or great transformation.
So it comes after the hedgehog concept is in place.
Always. It has to serve the concept.
Yep.
Walgreens invested heavily in a satellite network called Intercom in the early 80s.
And that let you refill a prescription at any Walgreens, anywhere.
Which tied directly to their hedgehog concept of convenient drugstores and profit per customer visit. It was technology for hedgehog's sake, not technology for technology's sake.
And they had that same discipline during the dot-com bubble.
They took a crawl, walk, run approach to the internet. They didn't panic. They asked, how does this fit our three circles? Meanwhile, drugstore.com went from run to walk to crawl and lost almost all its value because it was all hype and no discipline concept.
It's all about the application of the technology, not just having it.
Precisely. Gillette pioneered laser welding, but only because they needed it to make billions of cheap, high-tolerance razor blades, the core of their hedgehog. Technology is a means, never an end.
And all of this disciplined, sequential work, the people, the thought, the action, leads to the final big idea, the flywheel effect.
This explains why transformation looks so sudden from the outside, but feels so different from the inside. Imagine a giant, heavy flywheel. The first few pushes are just agonizing. You barely see it move.
You just had to keep pushing.
You push and you push and you push. There's no single big push, no miracle moment. But at some point, momentum kicks in, and the thing starts to spin faster and faster under its own weight. That's the breakthrough.
So the media only shows up when the flywheel is already spinning at 1,000 RPMs and calls it an overnight success.
Exactly. But to the people inside, it was just this organic, cumulative process. Step by step, push by push. Most of them couldn't even point to a single moment when the transformation began.
And the opposite of the flywheel is the doom loop.
The doom loop. That's where the comparison companies were stuck. Reaction without understanding, which leads to a new leader or a new fad, which leads to disappointing results, and you just repeat the cycle.
Like Warner Lambert lurching between consumer products and pharmaceuticals with every new CEO.
They kept pushing the flywheel in a different direction every few years. It never had a chance to build up any kinetic energy.
And the amazing result of the flywheel is that all those problems of alignment and motivation, they just kind of solve themselves.
It comes full circle. When people see and feel the results, when they see the flywheel moving, they get excited. They line up with enthusiasm. Commitment and motivation follow results and momentum, not the other way around.
So let's bring this all home. The research talks about Good to Great as being a kind of prequel to the work in Built to Last.
Right. Good to great is how you get the flywheel spinning, level 5, first who, brutal facts, hedgehog, all of it. To make it enduring, to build it to last for generations, you then have to add a core ideology values and a purpose that go beyond just making money.
But for you, the listener, what does this all mean for building a great life, not just a great company?
The clearest link, I think, is that first who principle. Your life is really defined by the people you choose to spend your time with. Coleman Mockler, the CEO of Gillette, he was a master at this.
And he had incredible work-life balance, right? Even during these huge takeover battles.
He rarely worked nights or weekends, which seems impossible, but because he was so rigorous about getting the right people in the right seats, he didn't have to be there all the time. He trusted his team. And the ultimate insight there is just, it's so simple. If you spend most of your time with people you love and respect, you'll almost certainly have a great life, no matter what happens.
The level 5 humility shows up personally, too. David Packard of HP, one of the first Silicon Valley billionaires, lived in the same small house his whole life. His eulogy just said, rancher, etc.
It's about channeling your ambition into the work, not yourself. And it's about finding meaningful work, your personal hedgehog concept. If you can find work that you are so deeply passionate about, the pursuit of excellence just becomes inevitable, becomes the path of least resistance.
So our final thought for you as you try to apply this is a really provocative one.
It is. And it's that it is no harder to build something great than to build something good. In fact, it's often less suffering.
How so?
Because mediocrity is chaos. It's the constant firefighting of the doom loop. But the disciplined focus required for greatness, saying no to everything that doesn't fit your 3 circles, it radically simplifies your life. It makes you more effective. You stop wasting energy.
So the greatest choice you can make is finding that meaningful intersection for yourself, that work you're so passionate about, that applying the discipline to make it great becomes the most natural thing in the world. And that choice, that's what really unlocks the physics of transformation.